Run your hand down your arm. Go ahead, actually do it. It feels smooth, bare, a little cold maybe, almost naked. Now picture a chimpanzee, a gorilla, an orangutan. Every single one of your closest living relatives is covered, head to toe, in thick fur. They are wrapped in a coat they were born wearing. You are not. Out of the hundreds of primate species on Earth, you belong to the only one that walks around essentially naked. Most people never think about this, and the ones who do usually shrug and say the same thing. We lost our fur to stay cool, end of story. But that's not quite right. The real reason you're bare is far stranger than heat, and by the end of this, you'll see that the same accident that stripped the fur from your body is the reason you can understand these words at all. So here's the question. Why did you, alone among the apes, go naked? To answer it, we first have to figure out when it happened. And the honest answer is, nobody was there to watch. Fur doesn't fossilize. There's no bald skeleton in a museum with a little sign that says first naked human. For decades, this made the timing almost impossible to pin down. Then scientists found a clever back door through your skin color. Here's the logic. An ape covered in fur has pale skin underneath because the hair already blocks the sun. But the moment you strip that fur away on the open savanna, bare skin starts to burn, and the body has to flood itself with dark pigment to survive. So if you can date the gene for dark skin, you can date the loss of fur. In 2004, the geneticist Alan Rogers did exactly that. Studying a pigment gene called MC1R, he estimated that human skin had already turned dark, which means we had already gone naked, at least 1.2 million years ago. That is staggeringly old. This wasn't the cave painters. This wasn't even our own species. We were already bare-skinned back in the time of Homo erectus, an ancestor who had barely learned to tame fire. You have been naked for over 1 million years. And a second clock agrees. The lice that live in human clothing are a different species from the lice that live in our hair, and the clothing kind could only have appeared once we had clothing for them to live in. In 2003, the geneticist Mark Stoneking dated that split to roughly 70,000 years ago, which means, for more than 1 million years, we weren't just naked. We were naked with nothing at all to cover us. But knowing when only deepens the mystery of why. So let's go to the leading answer, the one about heat. Because it's true. It's just bigger than you think. Picture the African savanna 1 million years ago. It is brutally hot, and there is no shade. Your ancestors had started doing something no other primate does well, walking and running long distances under the open sun, chasing food. And running generates heat. For a furry animal, that heat is a trap. A coat that's wonderful in the cold becomes an oven when you sprint. A lion, a cheetah, a gazelle can only run hard for a few minutes before they have to stop and pant and dump the heat, or they cook from the inside. Your ancestors found a different solution. They threw away the coat, and they covered their bare skin in sweat glands, between 2 and 4 million of them, far more than any other mammal. Naked skin plus sweat is an evaporative cooling system, a kind of biological air conditioning that runs while you move. In 2004, the scientists Daniel Lieberman and Dennis Bramble laid this out in the journal Nature, in a paper on endurance running. Their argument was simple and a little unsettling. A human can't outrun a deer in a sprint. But a human can do something far scarier. A human can chase a deer for hours, at a steady jog, in the midday heat, never stopping, until the animal, trapped inside its own fur, overheats, staggers, and collapses. This is called persistence hunting, and a few human groups, like the San of the Kalahari, still do it today. You didn't catch your prey by being fast. You caught it by being the one animal on the landscape that refused to overheat. But cooling is only half the story, and what comes next is stranger, because once your fur was gone, other forces went to work on your naked skin. Think about what lives in fur: ticks, fleas, lice, mites. A thick coat is a private jungle for parasites, and parasites carry disease. In 2003, the biologists Mark Pagel and Walter Bodmer published a paper with a wonderfully blunt title. A naked ape would have fewer parasites. Their point was that shedding fur was also shedding the bugs that lived in it, and in a world with no medicine, fewer parasites meant more survival. And then there's the strangest force of all: attraction. Charles Darwin himself suspected that we lost our fur, partly because we found bare skin beautiful. But it may go deeper than taste. Naked skin is honest. On a furry animal, you can hide a rash, a scar, a fever, a swarm of fleas. On bare skin, you can hide nothing. Smooth, clear, unblemished skin became a billboard that announced, to anyone looking, I am healthy, I have nothing to hide. We may have stripped ourselves bare, in part, to prove we had nothing to fear. But there's one more layer to this, and it might be the strangest part of all, because here is a fact that sounds impossible. You never actually lost your fur. Count the hair follicles on a human body and on a chimpanzee's, and you'll find roughly the same number. We did not delete the hair, we shrank it. Across your naked skin sit millions of follicles, each one still growing a hair, but a hair so fine, so short, so colorless that you can barely see it. The coat is still there, it just went invisible, and your body has not forgotten it. At the base of every one of those tiny hairs sits a little muscle, and when you're cold or afraid, that muscle yanks the hair upright, trying to puff up a thick coat for warmth, and all it produces is a faint bump on the skin. You know it by its common name, goosebumps. Every time the hair rises on your arm, your body is reaching for fur that hasn't existed for a million years. So we have heat, parasites, beauty, and a ghost coat that never left. But none of that is really the answer. Because the deepest reason you lost your fur isn't about your skin at all. It's about what's inside your skull. Here is the twist. Your brain is a furnace. It makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it burns roughly 20% of your energy, and all of that energy turns into heat. A brain is exquisitely fragile to temperature. Let it overheat by just a few degrees, and you get confusion, then seizures, then death. For most animals, this puts a hard ceiling on how big a brain can grow, because a big brain is a big heat problem. But your ancestors had just invented the perfect radiator. Naked skin, drenched in sweat, dumping heat as fast as the body could make it. And so the brain was set free to grow. Over the same stretch of time that we went bare, the human brain nearly tripled in size, from around 450 cubic centimeters in our early ancestors to roughly 1,300 in you. It was an explosion that simply could not have happened inside a coat of fur. A chimpanzee, sealed in its thick coat, could never afford a brain like yours, because it could never shed the heat one would make. The cooling system we built to chase antelopes turned out to be the cooling system that let us think. You did not lose your fur so you could run. You lost it so you could grow a mind too hot to keep any other way. Your bare skin is the price of your intelligence, and the engine of it. So tonight, when the cold finds you, and the hair stands up along your arm, those tiny muscles pulling at a coat that vanished a million years ago, remember what you traded. You gave away your fur for a furnace of a brain, an organ so demanding it needed your whole body turned into a radiator, just to keep from burning. The smooth skin you ran your hand over at the start of this isn't emptiness, it's a receipt. And the goosebumps are just the ghost of the animal you used to be, still reaching, in the dark, for a warmth your mind made unnecessary.